Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Kaylee Isaacs. I'm the producer of the Mindful Relationship Summit and the founder of the Awake Network. It's my honor to introduce Dr. Rick Hanson tonight, who is an incredibly skilled and generous teacher. He's a renowned psychologist, New York Times bestselling author, founder of the Wellspring Institute for Neuroscience and Contemplative Wisdom, and a senior fellow of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. And as many of you know, using his extensive background in psychology and practical neuroscience, Dr. Hanson has spent 35 years developing the structure of the 12 pillars of well-being. And each pillar is a specific resource for cultivating overall well-being and happiness. So we're going to start off tonight speaking with Dr. Hanson about the 12 pillars of well-being. And in particular, we're going to explore some of the key points for the pillar of intimacy, as well as the pillar of aspiration. And that will be followed by asking some questions that will be from the community that's watching live now. And so the way that you'll ask your questions is if you scroll down on this page, you will see a comment area. And this is where you're going to write in your questions. And we'll go over those questions during the second half of this call tonight. So maybe take a moment to test it out and scroll down and introduce yourself in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from so we can see who is on the call here together. So we're also gonna, we have about 3,000 people that registered to be on this call, so we're expecting a lot of questions. So we're really gonna be looking for the questions that are pithy and to the point so we can get through a lot of them tonight. So after the live Q&A is over, we'll also have an opportunity to hear a little bit about Rick Hanson's online course that focuses on developing the 12 pillars of well-being in our everyday lives. So now it's my honor to welcome Dr. Rick Hanson.
Kaylee, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for that very generous introduction. And also greetings to everybody who's watching or listening to this, whether it's live or later. It just amazes me quite happily that we can do this with each other. So great, I'm excited. Let's get to it.
Great, yes, thank you so much for being here with us. Could you start off by telling us about the 12 pillars to well-being and why you created this approach?
Yeah. Well, to kind of rewind it a little bit, for me, there are two ways into this, really three, in terms of how to think about it. So the first way is to think in terms of what are the resources, psychological resources, that's a broad term. Inner strengths would be another way of putting it, that really would help us to deal with the challenges we're facing in life or to deal with our own psychology, you know, issues left over from childhood or just maybe tendencies of one kind or another. So for example, some major resources are things like mindfulness, you know, the ability to step back from our experience and sustain witnessing of it, as you well know. Another key resource, maybe the most fundamental of all, is what, you know, could be called self-caring, being on your own side, being a friend to yourself, including with self-compassion. That's a fundamental resource because if we don't have that, it's hard to have any other resources. Another resource would be learning, the ability to learn from our experiences and grow from them. Not just have passing experiences that might be useful or enjoyable, but in fact, use our experiences to hardwire beneficial resources inside ourselves so that we have more for ourselves, but also as our cup fills up, we have more to offer other people. So that's that general idea of resources. And in the field of psychology, other examples of resources include secure attachment, or what are called executive functions, being able to regulate attention and action and emotion. Other resources that are well known in psychology include things like stress tolerance or distress tolerance or resilience, being able to bounce back from tough times, okay? So, you know, I'm a longtime rock climber, a longtime out in wilderness kind of guy, love going hiking off trail. And I think, wow, what's in my backpack? You know, kind of a broader version of that advertisement, what's in your wallet, right? What's in your backpack? What do you have with you as you go down the long road of life? And for me, psychological resources are what we carry with us wherever we go that's not dependent upon our external circumstances or, you know, passing states of mind, but are traits of various kinds that are woven into our own being embedded fundamentally in our own body that we can use for the long road of life, for well-being and effectiveness and healing, and also contributing to others. So that's one way to think about this. The second way to think about it, for those who are interested in this, is to think about the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism as a completely psychological drive theory of suffering. In other words, the Buddha's hypothesis is that when people crave, that creates suffering for themselves and other people. Well, the question is, why do we crave? Craving is a drive state, broadly defined. It's a reaction to things being unpleasant or pleasant or relational or neutral that's based on an underlying sense of deficit and disturbance, deficit or disturbance, something missing or something wrong. That tips animals, including big human animals, into a drive state to push away what's unpleasant or chase after and get attached to and even addicted to what's pleasant, or cling to what is relational or heartfelt, or just kind of brush aside what's neutral to, go on and chase some kind of reward. So the question then becomes, if suffering is the result of craving, and if craving is the result of an underlying sense of something missing, something wrong, what can we do about that? And that's where this idea of growing resources is so useful. Because if we repeatedly experience that our fundamental needs are met, so that there's no basis for deficit and disturbance. There's no basis for something missing, something wrong. If we repeatedly internalize the felt sense of basic needs met, then there's less and less of an underlying driver of the craving that is such a driver of suffering and harm, including subtle forms of feeling like there's not enough or I'm unsettled in my life. So through using what's called experience-dependent neuroplasticity, through repeatedly having and then internalizing experiences of needs met in terms of especially three basic needs: safety, satisfaction, and connection. As we do that, then more and more we can meet the next moment. We can live and engage life at the front edge of now with a sense of fullness and balance rather than deficit and disturbance. In effect, meeting the next moment with what I call a green zone brain, a brain that has internalized a very strong sense of safety, satisfaction, and connection, or psychologically a sense of peace and contentment and love, on the basis of which we meet the next moment, feeling already full, already safe, already satisfied, already connected, already enough. And that's a really wonderful way to move through life, and it's one that responds to the Buddhist drive theory of suffering. So that's a second way into this notion of resources. It's through having resources inside ourselves that there's less and less basis for craving. And then the last way of looking at resources, which is kind of a big swing, is to imagine what might happen to the course of human history if a critical mass of human beings really experienced that there was already enough inside themselves, that there was already a stable balance inside themselves. Let's call that a resilient happiness. Then the citizens of the world, as it were, all the members of the human tribe, would be a lot harder to manipulate with the classic manipulations of fear in terms of safety, greed in terms of satisfaction needs, and us against them conflicts in terms of connection needs. And so it's not just that we practice for ourselves when we grow resources inside. In effect, we practice for the whole wide world, because as we become more settled into and rested in a green zone brain, and as we help more and more people do the same, then there's an opportunity to move away from Game of Thrones and that way that humans have conducted themselves for, certainly since agriculture came in, with tremendous inequalities of wealth and power, and a world that is not supportive of the common good, but rather is supportive of, the narrow good of just a few people. So, for me, I can talk about this at any scale, just the ordinary scale of, what can you grow inside yourself to get through your day more happily and more effectively. We could also think about this in terms of, if it's of interest to people, what it actually might look like to reverse engineer and enlightened brain. And we can also talk about this ultimately at the level of, getting a critical mass. I don't know, 1 billion brains in the green zone, most minutes of most days. I think that's probably roughly where the tipping point is. Maybe we'll get lucky and it's only 100 million or so brains in the green zone, most minutes of most days. But if we get there, we can change the course of history. So anyway, hopefully that was useful in terms of resources. And if you're curious, how did I come up with 12, right? How do we do that? Right? So if you think about resources, we need resources for meeting needs. This is a fundamental idea in psychology that's grounded in biology, really. Animals are need-satisfying, need-meeting creatures. That's what we all do. We all have needs of various kinds. There's no way around it. If we're going to live life in an embodied way, we need to really think about our own needs and how we go about meeting them. We don't have a choice, but the 3 fundamental needs of any animal, including us, needs for safety and satisfaction and connection. We don't have any choice about that. We also don't have a choice about the 3 stages of the evolution of the brain, the lizard, or reptilian, mammalian, and primate human stages of evolution that are loosely associated with more and more effective ways of meeting those 3 needs for safety, satisfaction, and connection. We don't have a choice about that. We don't even have a choice about the fact that the brain has 2 basic ways of going about meeting our needs. One is the green zone, the responsive setting, where we meet our needs on the basis of already feeling a certain fullness and balance in the core of our being. We're meeting challenges, but we're not, rattled by it, and we're not desperate about it. We feel resourced as we meet our needs. But the other setting in the brain is the familiar fight, flight, freeze, reactive mode of the brain. I call it the red zone, in which we meet our needs or meet challenges to needs on the basis of feeling not enough inside or disturbed in our core, which then triggers a crave response, broadly defined, including subtle forms of craving in the red zone, the reactive mode, as we go about meeting our needs. So we don't have a choice about that. So we have these 3 needs, no choice there. Needs related to 3 stages of brain evolution, no choice there. 2 basic settings, 2 ways of going about meeting our needs, no choice there. Our only fundamental choice is which mode we're in. Are we in the green zone or the red zone? That's the only fundamental choice we have. And the way to rest increasingly in the green zone is to grow resources inside yourself so that as challenges come, you can meet them on the basis of a resilient happiness in the core of your being, even as you deal with tough things. So to grow those resources inside, to meet those needs, I think there are 4 aspects of well-being that each one of those 3 needs is related to. So if we're going to have well-being in a broad sense, which we want, hedonic well-being that has to do with ordinary happiness, as well as eudaimonic well-being, a sense of meaning and purpose and fulfillment. If we're going to have that, if we're going to meet our needs, there are 4 aspects of well-being, I think. And I made this up myself. So see if it's relevant to you. By the way, Kaylee, are you talking to me? I cannot hear. Okay, good. I'm just moving your lips, but I can't hear you. That's good. I'm not missing anything. And I'll wrap up my little riff here in just a second. So I think that one aspect of well-being is recognizing what's going on. Hello, wake up, say what, all right? That's a fundamental part of well-being. I think all the great teachers, including my root teacher, the Buddha, talked about ignorance or delusion as the fundamental source of well-being. In the Bible, it talks about the truth shall set ye free. It is the truth that sets us free. As a scientist, a scientifically oriented person, I'm deeply interested in what's actually true. I don't believe in positive thinking. I believe in realistic thinking. I want to know what reality is with my own fallible mind as best I can. So the first aspect of well-being is recognizing. Right? Then second, we need to resource ourselves. We need to build resources. So we have resourcing. Third aspect of well-being, I think, is regulating. We need to regulate ourselves so that we can cope and manage and maintain a healthy equilibrium, even as the waves of life move through us. And then the fourth aspect of well-being is relating. You know, we don't just have well-being for ourselves, we apply that well-being out into the world as we relate to other people. So to finish up here, how I got to 12 pillars of well-being, we have 4 aspects of well-being, right? Recognizing, resourcing, regulating, and relating. And then we apply each one of those 4 aspects of well-being to the 3 needs, right? Of safety, satisfaction, and connection. That gives us a 4x3 matrix, gives us 12 cells or intersections of 4 aspects of well-being and 3 needs. And that 12 gives us the 12 pillars. So for example, just to use one, intimacy is a topic and a pillar that appeals to people. I think of intimacy as an aspect of regulating our needs for connection. So how do we regulate our needs for connection in relationship to other people? That for me takes us into an intimacy, which for me is a lot about balancing me and we, autonomy and connectedness. How do we balance those and regulate our fundamental, important desires to be independent and autonomous while also being in relationship with other people, for example. Or let's take the aspirational pillar, aspiration pillar. I think of that as about meeting our needs for connection in relationship to work and other people and family, dreaming big dreams, daring greatly, as Brene Brown puts it. So that would be a way in which the aspect of well-being that's about relating would be applied to our need for satisfaction, giving us the pillar of well-being, aspiration. A little bit, this is somewhat arbitrary, frankly, in an organizing framework of 12 fundamental pillars. I put into that framework my own hard lessons from 40 plus years of practice, overcoming a lot of suffering inside myself, working with other people in many contexts, human potential, psychology, neuropsychology, and mindfulness training. For me, I guess just finishing up here most fundamentally, I think that while it's really important to intervene out in the world, to do everything we can to help people have enough to eat, to promote justice, and bring compassion to other people, wherever you go, there you are. As John Kabat-Zinn put it in the title of his book, wherever you go, there you are. And the resources you have inside yourself, baked into your own body, hardwired into your own nervous system, are the fundamental essence of self-reliance. And for me, it's really quite old school. As the Buddha taught toward the end of his life, and others have said, we need to be a lamp unto ourselves, a light unto ourselves. That's not to negate the importance of what other people can do for us, but at the beginning and in the middle and at the end, as we meet the next moment, the most fundamental factor or variable that determines what it's like when the next moment lands is what we've got inside ourselves. And so growing the good inside ourselves every day really excites me. And teaching people how to do that and offering resources to them for doing that, to me is a really, really, really important kind of work, especially as the world altogether is going through so much turbulence right now.
Yeah, and thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah.
All right,
what do you think about all that?
I found it very helpful myself to look over the 12 pillars, and I was just contemplating each of them and thinking about which ones I really felt strong in, and areas where I felt maybe like I wanted to spend more time. And I gave an example to the community in an email that I really felt like I could spend more time cultivating calm in my life right now after producing the last online summit. And so the community, many people in the community did the same and went through the list contemplating the 12 pillars, and two of the pillars that people were most interested in hearing about were intimacy and aspiration, as you had mentioned. But also a common question that came up from the community was if there is any particular pillar that you feel like you're working on more in your life right now.
That's a good question. Well, tell you what, why don't I comment a little briefly, more briefly than my initial introduction here, and then we'll have the maximum amount of time for questions, comments, discussion from the community out there. How's that sound? Sound okay? All right, great. So, well, for myself, it's a great question, isn't it? That's what I always ask people in a way. What are you working on yourself? Well, to be honest, two things really. I would say first, the pillar of aspiration is, or actually I would say the pillar of motivation is especially near and dear to me because I tend to be by nature very determined to a fault, and someone whose primary addiction probably is lining out items in my to-do list, right? So being able to engage tasks in a way that is focused and determined while simultaneously unattached and at peace, or at peace is probably a better way to put it. I'm determined, I want a result to occur, but I also try to simultaneously cultivate a fundamental peacefulness about whatever happens. And I'd say that's a growing edge for me. I really enjoy engaging that because my daily life is full of tasks and gives me many, many opportunities to both pursue something while at the same time, holding it lightly. So I'd say I'm working on that. And the other one I'm working on is to try to have more of a sense of, I guess, the endless processes of change, certainly in our own phenomenology, our own stream of consciousness, infused with love, to have a sense of it's just this amazing, dynamic field of consciousness through which love somehow is shining. And so I'm not exactly sure which pillar that falls into. In some ways, for me, it's the last one, the pillar of service or generosity, so that even as we deal with difficult things in life, somehow we feel like love is shining through, and open increasingly to that in ways that I think start edging outside of the natural frame of science into, something even potentially transcendental. So it's pretty honest right there. Let's see, for intimacy, I'll just comment on that. I would say for me, the intimacy pillar is about regulating the dance of me and we. That as psychologists point out, people have two great themes really in human psychology, and you see the play of these themes in our literature and in everyday life. You see it played out in preschool, you see it played out in the capitals of the world. The tension between the individual and the community, or between the need to be, self-determined, but also recognizing that we are dependent upon others, including ultimately the ecosphere altogether, Mother Earth altogether. So how do we balance those two? And that's what the intimacy pillar is really about. And the paradox that as we develop a stronger sense of me, of autonomy, we become much more comfortable with opening out into other people, and much more open to, including through empathy, for the inputs of other people, the passions and needs of other people, and the feelings of other people, because we feel increasingly like we have a deeply rooted tree, really going down deep into the earth, through which the winds and storms even of other people can blow, but in our core, we're not disturbed. Going back to what creates, one of the things that creates craving, we're not blown away by it, And so it's a paradox that as we strengthen me, we become more open to we. Flip the other way, as we become more open into relationships and more able to give love and receive love, and take into ourselves the care and kindness and support of other people, that builds up a sense of me. So the sense of we feeds me, and deepening the sense of me feeds we. And looking to see where a person's strengths and weaknesses are in those two, I think is also quite useful. Some people are really good at autonomy. I was very good at autonomy growing up because I needed to be. And it took me a lot to learn, more how to be we. Flip the other way, I know people who are very good at being relational, but in their core, it's hard for them to assert themselves or to stick up for their own needs or to draw healthy boundaries between themselves and others. And those are people that could, develop more of a sense of me. So that's a little bit of a riff on the intimacy pillar. One thing I would just say about that, actually a lot of people who seem overly cold or distant actually are so wide open to others that they're blown away by others. And they actually have to handle that by retreating into their own inner castle, their own inner citadel. So paradoxically, if they had a stronger sense of me, they would be more able to receive others empathically without being so flooded by them. It's interesting to think about it that way. And then aspiration, I think about, how do we be ambitious and passionate, engaged in the world? And as a guy who's very attentive to craving and the pitfalls in drivenness and getting caught up in trying to impress other people in terms of aspiration and ambition, I find it really, really interesting to ask ourselves, how do we aspire without attachment, right? How do we go for it, including in my own rock climbing history? How do I go for it to really climb hard and do some amazing things? How do I try to build a business or write a book or encourage other people to dream their big dreams and not lose faith with themselves, not sell themselves short? How do we do that while at the same time being able to tolerate the risks of taking a big swing and striking out, right? In baseball, the people who have the highest home run history usually have the highest strikeout history. The two tend to go together. So how do we live with the risk of taking a big swing and whack, falling on our face, right? How do you resource yourself so you're willing to be to take big swings and be ambitious and aspirational? Also, how do you be ambitious and aspirational without getting driven about it? So that's for me what the aspiration pillar is about. And it's a particularly, I think, important pillar for people who are interested in helping big things happen. Now, the big thing might be having a child. Might be, the aspiration might be, finding a true love, someone to really spend the rest of your life with from this point going forward, whatever has happened for you in the past. That could be a person's big aspiration. How do they resource themselves, and how do they bring wisdom to that particular big dream in a way that's wholesome and healthy for themselves and for other people? So that's what that aspiration pillar is about.
Thank you so much, Rick. We have a few questions coming in.
Okay.
And then relate to those pillars, so I thought I would start with some of those.
Yeah.
This one is, what is intimacy really?
That's interesting. I love those kind of questions, like to get right to the bottom line. So people use that word differently. Often it's used for sexual romantic intimacy. I'm using it more broadly than that. I think the root of it is in the French, something about to really be joined with another and known by another and knowing another, to be intimate, to intimate something of what it's like. So there's a sharing, in effect, of the streaming of consciousness when people are intimate with each other. I think there are many forms of intimacy. My own background in psychology is actually grounded in developmental psychology. I did my dissertation on 15-month-olds who are very intimate with their mothers, 10 boys and 10 girls, and what happened when the rubber met the road and what the child wanted and the mother wanted were different. And then the mother, instead of thwarting the desires of the child, offered some alternatives instead. I mean, for me, that's a very beautiful dance of intimacy. And then, of course, there are subtleties, the intimacies I had with my father in the last few months of his life when he was in trouble, and there was a lot of intimate care of him, especially in his last days. And so there are many, many kinds of intimacy. Just to finish on that point, one of the beautiful things about intimacy is that at the end of the day, one of the great horrors and terrors, which is why solitary confinement is such a terrible, terrible punishment. I think it's cruel and unusual punishment, actually, is that one of our terrors and horrors is to get to the end of our days and not feel that we've been known by at least one person, and to get to the end of our days and, feel that we haven't truly known another person deeply. Well, I say that not to alarm anyone, trigger alert, but rather to point to the importance, the profound importance of intimacy.
Thank you. And I'm just going to remind the audience, especially if you're tuning in later, we are going to be going through a lot of questions right now from the community. So if you haven't asked your question yet, you can go down to the comments below. I know a lot of people are watching directly in YouTube, so scroll down to the comments and ask your question, and we'll be working through them. And our next one is, how do you develop self-esteem without relying on approval of others?
That's a fantastic question as well. Well, I'll do it in two parts. The first part has to do with, how do we develop anything? It's a great question. And the way we develop anything that lasts is we must change the body, especially the nervous system, especially the brain. That's the fundamental place. It's the primary place in the body in which we grow the good. We learn, we develop, we heal, we transform, we awaken, at least insofar as the natural body is involved in the process of awakening. That occurs mainly through processes of lasting change of neural structure and function. The famous saying in neuroscience is, neurons that fire together wire together. In other words, through having some kind of beneficial experience, through experiencing, in other words, what we want to grow, experiencing compassion, experiencing confidence, experiencing self-worth, experiencing self-esteem, let's say, and then not just experiencing it, but internalizing it, installing that experience, that passing state of mind as a lasting change of neural structure or function, so that a state can increasingly become a trait, hardwired into our being from the inside out. And that process of learning, that process of transferring a passing experience to some kind of lasting change happens fairly quickly, but it needs some time. It needs a breath or two or three, especially for an emotional experience or a sensory, somatic experience or an interpersonal experience, not just an idea or a fact, to truly become consolidated, to begin the consolidation process of a lasting change of neural structure and function. So the two-step process here that's very fundamental, I call it positive neuroplasticity. I teach it a lot. It's at the foundation of growing the foundations of well-being. We are growing something, so we grow it by experiencing it and then learning from that experience in a durable way. So specifically now, to the question, how do you grow self-esteem when others are not approving of you? It speaks to two pathways for growing self-esteem or self-worth broadly. One pathway is, as the person is getting at, feeling valued and cared about and mattering and existing and being of worth to others. That's a primary pathway. But the good news, it's not the only pathway. You are not dead in the water if others are not giving you approval. And it's very important to appreciate that we can develop authentic experiences and an authentic basis of self-worth from the inside out through registering for ourselves ways in which we're capable. We're getting lots of little things done. Even in a very limited life, we're still getting lots of little things done as we go through the day. We are capable in lots and lots of ways. Another thing is that we have wholesome qualities inside us. We have good intentions, even if we don't always act upon them. We have love and kindness and compassion in our heart for other people. We have a sense of justice. Even if we get our knickers in a twist and we get all upset about something, we come down to a soft landing and, at the end of the day, we're willing to acknowledge our own fault in the matter. We have good qualities inside ourselves. That's the second thing, that we can draw upon to have a sense of worth inside ourselves. A third thing we can look at is that we contribute to other people. We don't just have good capabilities. We don't just have good virtues or wholesome qualities. We actually make a difference for other people in ways large and small. We let other people go ahead of us. We get things done at work. We offer them to other people. We are helpful with friends. We help children along the way. We're kind to older people. We wish well to people on the other side of the world. We have a generosity in us and a contributing in us that's very meaningful to others and helpful to others. That's a third basis for self-worth. And last and far from least, to the extent that it's meaningful to a person, we can tune into a ground of being inside all of us. Maybe we understand that ground of being in a purely secular way, even an atheistic way. It's just simply a fundamental property of the nervous system, of embodied living, a ground of being in which there's a going on livingness or a field of awareness that itself is pure, no matter what impurities it represents or arise and pass away inside it. Or if it's meaningful to us, we might intuit or sense or experience or believe that that ground of being stretches out into something infinite, something transcendental, something outside of the natural frame. Whatever it might be for a person, and I'm not trying to push one viewpoint or another, but whatever it might be for a person, that fourth opportunity for self-worth to have a sense of innate value and beauty and radiance, no matter what has happened to you and no matter whether others are approving of you. And then when you have one or more of those kinds of experiences as you move through your day, experiences of your capabilities, your virtues, your contributions and benefits, or your own ground of being, as you have those experiences, stay with them for a breath or two or three or more, taking into yourself food for your hungry heart so it gradually lands inside you, getting metabolized inside you, weaving its way into the fabric of your nervous system and therefore your being and your whole life. And I love this fact that there's always something you can do, including in terms of building up self-worth.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any more?
Yeah. So this one, how can I cultivate calm without saying no to my present experience?
That's a fantastic question. And it's right at the heart of it. You're exactly right. So first and foremost, our moment-to-moment experience is what it is. And if we fight it, we're stuck with it. The old line, what you resist persists, right? So first and foremost, we must have an acceptance and an openness to the arising moment. On the other hand, to be able to do that without being flooded by what's coming at us, especially if it's painful and difficult, we need to grow resources. In other words, to be able to be with the stream of consciousness, we need to work with it to grow things like mindfulness and self-compassion and observing awareness and resilience and positive emotion, positive mood, so that there's an underlying foundation of resources inside us that then enable us to be with the stream of consciousness without being swept away by it. Right? So then the question becomes, how do we be calm in the face of all that? And that's where I think it's important to, in that particular pillar of well-being, to develop more capacity to relax and engage what's called the parasympathetic wing of the nervous system. This sometimes is called the rest and digest wing of the nervous system, which is distinct from the sympathetic wing of the nervous system, which is involved in fighting or fleeing. So we have rest and digest, or fight and flee. There's a place for resting and digesting where you kind of slow down, like people when they exhale, engage the parasympathetic wing of the nervous system. And if you deliberately make your exhalations for 2 or 3 or 5 times in a row, at least as long as, if not longer than your inhalation, you will notice that your heart rate is slowing and you're calm, you're settling down. So growing the resource of parasympathetic activation can help us stay calmer and more at peace inside ourselves, no matter what is passing through our mind. That's one thing. A second thing that really helps us, develop our sense of calm is to recognize that much of the time when we're alarmed, it's what I call paper tiger paranoia. In other words, the truth is we're scared little monkeys, and a lot of what we're scared of isn't really happening. People might be blapping at us, threat level orange. Actually, we're a lot safer than we think we are most of the time. So realizing that much of the time, whether it's other people or often the alarms inside our own head, they're false alarms. They're not true. They're not realistic. We don't have to believe them. That's another way to help ourselves stay calmer with what is passing through us. And then last, I'll just offer one more way to stay calmer, frankly, is to cool anger. Anger is a natural emotion. I'm not saying we should suppress our anger. In particular, I'm not saying that we should suppress anger for people who have been told historically they ought to suppress their anger, classically like children, women, and minority groups of various kinds, or disadvantaged groups, even if they're in the majority, such as in apartheid regimes of various kinds. They've been told to shut down their anger. Well, there's a reason why they're mad. There's a reason why they're outraged. So I'm not saying anything that's suppressive here. That said, anger is a very intense and powerful emotion. It can carry us away, partly because it feels rewarding in the moment, unlike other negative emotions such as sadness, fear, or shame. The three great groups of so-called negative emotions: sadness, fear, shame, and anger. Anger is the one that feels rewarding in the moment. So it's the one that can most tend to carry us away. Also, anger is the emotion that tends to have the greatest negative impact on relationships. Being afraid or sad or hurt, or feeling inadequate in relationships, that doesn't tend to disturb other people as much as getting angry at them. That's the one that's very consequential. The Buddha had a nice metaphor for getting angry at others. He said it's like throwing hot coals with bare hands. Both people get burned. So paying attention to anger, watching the triggers of anger, and watching how we get primed toward anger by building up stress and frustration and grievances of various kinds, so that when the match lands, it's like dynamite going off. Paying attention to that anger is another way to stay calmer and more even-keeled, no matter what's flowing through us, without going to war with it.
Thank you. This one might be coming from sort of the opposite side. How do you deal with a cold or a distant partner?
Aha. How do you deal with a cold or distant partner? Right? That's a great question. So I'm a longtime couples therapist. I've also been married 35 plus years. My wife is the opposite of cold and distant, so I haven't had to grapple with that problem. She might have had to grapple with that problem a little bit with her introverted husband. But what I would say about it, first, my suggestion is to take care of your own side of the street. In the intimacy pillar, let me just double check. No, actually in another pillar I call it courage. I talk about unilateral virtue, in which, yes, sure, have your grievances about the other person, sure, express yourself, think about what you need, form a clear account in your own mind of reality of the relationship. That said, we don't have a lot of influence over other people, but we do have a lot of influence over ourselves. And if we exercise what I call unilateral virtue, trying to take maximum personal responsibility that's reasonable, maximum reasonable responsibility for the wants and needs of the other person, including their criticisms or grievances directed at us, as we gradually line out their complaints in a healthy sense of the word complaint. That's a very good strategy. It's not a guarantee, but it's the best odds strategy for eliciting better behavior from them, because we're taking care of their needs and we're giving them less to take issue with. Also, inside ourselves, if we exercise unilateral virtue, we know in our own heart that we've done what we could. So if over time the other person does not rise to the level we've risen to, it's very instructive. And then last, when we do exercise unilateral virtue for days, weeks, sometimes months in a row, I'm not talking about becoming a doormat. I'm not talking about, staying in an abusive relationship. But as we exercise unilateral virtue, certainly for days and even weeks in a row, that puts us on the moral high ground. That puts us in a much stronger position from which to say, look, you got to admit it. I've responded to your needs. I've done the things you wanted me to do. I've kept my agreements with you. And, it's your turn now. And there are, a few things here. So I think that's one thing. Second thing, with as it were, cold and distant partner, I think it's really helpful to operationalize and be concrete about what your own needs are. Sometimes partners who tend to be cold and distant are actually partners who are so open to relatedness. They're so flooded by relatedness, actually, that they need to withdraw just to kind of turn down the volume inside their own mind. So it helps people like that. I'm not saying that your partner is this way, but I'm just saying a lot of seemingly cold and distant partners are like this. It really helps for them to know that you just want this much. Because they think, maybe, oh my goodness, you're like a vampire, a black hole, and you're not. It's stunning often how little it actually takes to make someone happy. And I find that if a partner understands that, let's suppose that what you would really love is about an hour over the course of a typical day. 1 minute here, 10 minutes there, maybe 30 minutes in a row of full engaged presence with your partner. If you just got that 1 hour out of 16 waking hours, you would be so happy and you would be so generous in terms of meeting the desires and needs and wants of the other person. Wow, to hear that that's just what I'm talking about. It's just that. And maybe it's a little more concrete, being touched in certain ways that are not sexually invasive, or that are just, a giving rather than an asking. Not being, let's say, interrupted or demeaned or put down in front of the kids or the in-laws. Something concrete. Maybe that the other person, does more of their share of the housework in some kind of specific and concrete way. There's a lot to be said, I'm not saying here coming at another person, with a 30-point plan, list of particulars, but kind of bounding and clarifying and concretizing, making specific and concrete what it is we actually want from other people. Oftentimes people think they're on, they're going to get this list that's so long. It's just this, whatever just this is. It really helps to communicate that. Then, if the other person is not responsive to it, or if they say they're going to do it and then they don't actually do it, you know yourself what it is you've asked for. Last thing I'll say is to do this thing that I think is extremely useful with people, which is basically to think about and even talk about what would help you give me more of what I want from you. In other words, let's suppose that let's suppose I'll do it with Kaylee. So Kaylee, here we go, Kaylee. Let's suppose that you're cold and distant, which you're not. And I'm saying, Kaylee, I'd like more sense of connection with you. I would appreciate it if you told me more how you feel inside, gave me a little bit more of a window into your own inner world. And it would really help me if you asked me, I call it 3 questions in a row, if you actually asked me some questions about myself. Not questions like, did I get your shirts at the laundry? Or, when am I going to quit interrupting? But actually, how do I feel? And why do I feel what I feel? And, say more about that, please. So I would like that. I would like that if I got more of that from you. It would help me be a better partner to you. So then Kaylee might ask me, well, Rick, okay, I hear you, but you know what? For me to give you that, it would help me, I'm going to be blunt here, if, you were interested in sex once or twice a week. That would help me give you more of what you want from me. Or it would help me if you would knock before entering my mind. In other words, it would help me if you wouldn't just start talking at me when I'm reading a book or watching television or doing some work. I find that kind of invasive. So when that happens, I withdraw. So for me to give you, Kaylee is telling me in my hypothetical role play here, Kaylee is telling me, hey, Rick, for me to be more present and relational and warm and loving and intimate with you, it would help me to do that if you just would ask me if it's a good time to talk, rather than just invading me when I'm involved with working on the computer or something like that, right? So you see the back and forth of that? And I would then go, oh yeah, I want X from you. For you to give me more of X, it would help you. If I gave you more of Y, sure, that sounds like a really good idea. And so then we have a nice kind of positive dynamic going here. I will just finish by saying that I don't think what I'm laying out here is a 100% guarantee of success, but as someone who's watched a lot of couples and who's been in, raised 2 kids with my wife and been in a long relationship himself, I've seen that if people exercise unilateral virtue, boil down what they're asking for in clear, concrete terms, including asking for events inside the mind of another person, potentially, and then really looking at how can I help you give me more of what I'm asking for here. When people do that, the odds go up pretty dramatically of a good result. And if you don't get a good result, then oftentimes you got some tough decisions to make, some hard questions to answer, but at least you'll know inside yourself that you really, gave it a full try.
All right, so we have, I think, just maybe one more question left. We're getting a few questions in about aspiration, so I'm going to ask one that represents a few of them here. How do you address doubt so you can muster the willpower to act towards your aspirations?
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I'll be kind of brief about it. So, doubt. It's interesting that in both Buddhist psychology and Descartesian mind-body philosophy, doubt really shows up. So Descartes, this French philosopher and mathematician, was trying to decide whether he existed. And all the arguments for existence, he could doubt each one of those philosophical attempts to prove that we actually do exist, that it's just not all some psychotic dream. But the one thing he could not doubt was that he was doubting. Isn't that profound? That's what led to the famous saying, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. What it really means is, I doubt, therefore I know I exist, right? So, because we can doubt anything. So doubt is very powerful. And in Buddhist psychology, it said there are 5 basic hindrances to practice and growth and awakening and development. And of the 5, one of the arguably the most serious and dangerous and toughest one of all, the greatest hindrance of all, is doubt, it is sometimes said. So it's really a big deal. So how do we deal with that? One thing I look at is I ask myself, first of all, okay, what's realistic and true about the doubts? So rather than fighting them, because what you resist persists. So if I fight doubt, I just have more doubt, I try to turn it around and I say, okay, what might be valid here? What actually is useful in what the doubting voice is telling me, or what those external doubters are telling me? And then in my kind of, down-to-earth, practical, one step at a time, grinding it out kind of way. I believe in the cockroach theory of life, keep crawling. So in my keep crawling kind of way, I go, okay, what can I implement or address that's true or realistic about the doubts so that I know at least I've dealt with them? That's a fantastic way. It's kind of a jiu-jitsu way or an aikido way of dealing with doubt, to actually take it seriously, see what's important to deal with, and then deal with it. Bing, 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 as best you can. Number 1. Number 2, I look for evidence of worth and possibility. You know, what's the evidence on the side of, yeah, I can aspire for that. I can dream that dream. What's the evidence that I can do it, right? So I look for that, and I try to, when I can, take experiences of that evidence, including experiences of worth and capability, authentic confidence from the inside out. I try to take them into myself using the power of positive neuroplasticity to grow more confidence and self-assurance inside, which is an antidote to self-doubt. Third, one of the things, if you really think about it, doubt is about me, 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 me. Doubt is very self-referential. And I'll kind of finish with a quick story here. I was about to give the biggest talk of my life. This was about 9 or 10 years ago. And there were several thousand therapists and other professionals in the audience. One famous professor or therapist after another, or teacher, was giving a talk. And then it was going to be little Ricky's turn, you know, at the podium. And there I was in the audience. I had prepared good material, you know, decent material, but I was obsessing about myself. I was so preoccupied with myself. I doubted my worth. I doubted my material. It stirred up lots of stuff from childhood. I was trying to think, how could I impress people? You know, how could I make them really approve of me, really like me, really think I was smart? Me, 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 me. And as the more I thought about me, the worse I felt. And finally, to try to get out of my head, I turned to this funny little newsletter that was sitting on a chair nearby, in which, as luck would have it, who knows, there was an interview with the Dalai Lama, who was talking about being committed to the welfare of others. And I read that, and whew, I got, first, the best thing I could do for me was to stop thinking about me. And the best thing I could do for others would be to get over there with them, give what I had, and quit obsessing about it. And if you think about it, doubt tends to be very self-referential. Maybe the thing to do is to just give the gift, make the offering, do the best you can. It'll turn out however it turns out. If your heart is in the right place and your intentions are good, I think, you know, the world smiles upon good intentions, generally speaking. In the long road of life, we're going to have a lot of chances, a lot of opportunities. Give the gift. Get out of your own mind. Imagine what would be helpful to other people. Give it and keep on going. You know, life is long. And I think, you know, what we have inside ourselves, if you think about it, to finish, you know, sure, I'm sure there are people who should have listened to their self-doubts and, you know, not given that gift. But for that rare and occasional problem, the much bigger problem is people who have treasure inside themselves and are losing faith with themselves and not offering, actually out of generosity, so much of the jewels, so much of the treasure they have inside themselves to give to the world. And to me, that's the much larger issue or problem. And therefore, it's much more important to give the gift you've got. And, you know, as Leonard Cohen put it, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. We're all cracked. This is Rick speaking now. We're all cracked, but we still have so many beautiful gifts to give.
Thank you so much, Rick. It's always such a pleasure to hear you speak, see a little peek inside your mind, and thank you for sharing your time with us as a community.
Well, thank you.
I see that we're coming to the end of our time. I did mention to folks that we'd hear a little bit about your Foundations of Wellbeing course. So I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about that course, why you made it, and what people might be able to expect. Yeah. Interested in going deeper in that way. And I just love this course, so I'd love to hear you talk.
Oh, thank you. I'll be quick about it. Basically, I wanted to create an online program into which I could pour almost everything I've learned about psychology, healing, growth, and transformation. So this is a deeply powerful transformational journey of healing and growth and development to acquire resources inside yourself to both, you know, heal issues from childhood and elsewhere, as well as to increase your happiness and your effectiveness, to develop a resilient happiness for the long run of life. And, without pushing any particular spiritual view, if any kind of self-actualization or awakening or transformation is important to you, the resources that we develop in this program can be used for that purpose as well. So the program itself is online. It's very, very accessible. It's generously offered. So if you're in that program, you can download every video, every talk, every slide set, every bonus interview with a guest teacher in it, every creative experiential activity in it, as well as the other extra resources in it. You can download it. You can just listen to the audios alone. You can take it with you wherever you go. So basically, the way the program is organized is around these 12 pillars of well-being, loosely, not coincidentally, matched to the 12 months of the year. So if you want, a lot of people do this program over the course of a year. It's a year of transformation. It takes about an hour a week. You could put more into it or less into it as you like, but it's, designed to be roughly a year of, profound, lasting transformation. In each of the pillars, I divide them into 4 themes, one a week, essentially. And in each of those themes, there's a talk by me that kind of explains things, and then also a guided practice, as well as a self-assessment quiz and PowerPoint slides. There's no shortage of value offered in this program. And in each of the pillars, we have a guest teacher like Tara Brock, Jack Cornfield, Barbara Fredrickson, Jim Doty on compassion, and other great teachers and scholars in the program. And in each of the pillars, we have 2 experiential creative art activities that can make it kind of, personal and creative and tap both sides of your brain like that. And also in each one of those 4 sections, we have a little quiz so you can assess yourself, plus a ton of bonus material related to particular issues like trauma or addiction or spiritual practice or relationships with other people. So summing it all up, I think it's a phenomenal offering for people. It's highly experiential. It's grounded in science. We use the methods of positive neuroplasticity to hardwire these benefits and resources into ourselves. And also, one of the great things about this is that financial issues are never a stop for anyone. If money is an issue for anyone, we are really happy to make this program fully available to anyone, so that money should never be a stop. The net of it all is that thousands and thousands of people have done this program, and for me, the ultimate vision over time is to have a critical mass of people learn to hardwire fundamentally a green zone brain, so that inside yourself is a core of resilient well-being that is your basis for meeting the challenges of life, for your own sake and for the sake of others, and to grow a population worldwide that's harder to manipulate with fear, greed, or us against them conflicts.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanson. That's a beautiful vision. And I've taken a look at this course. I'm in there in the back end looking around, and it's quite amazing. Also, you didn't mention, I think, that each month of the year-long course, there's a live Q&A that was available with you. Is that still available for
absolutely. Yeah, we keep, that's completely available for people. I love that part. It's a little bit like what we've done here. And it's an opportunity to interact with me directly.
Yeah, I just think that's so helpful. So I think that there might be a little bit of an issue with the website. So many of you are probably watching right now on YouTube. But if you go back to the site that we sent you in the email, and we'll make sure to send you a link if you have any problems finding it, there is a link there. And I'm also being told that Ryan is writing the link in the chat. And that'll send you to the page. And there's a button that you can press below where the video would be that will send you to a page where you can learn more about the course. And there's also a coupon code on that page that is good until this Sunday, Awake 40, that will give you a discount on the course. And I'd also like to make a special offer. from the Awake Network for anyone that would choose to purchase before this Sunday. We're going to be including the entire Mindful Relationship package as a part of this if you purchase before Sunday. So that means that you'll get all 20 online sessions and all the bonus resources that most of you are probably familiar with from that summit, with over 20 online sessions with all the teachers that you saw during the free summit, with transcripts, video and audio downloads. So we'll be including that in the package, and that's for people who sign up by this Sunday. So again, if you're interested in learning more, you can look for the link in the YouTube chat or go back to the website where we sent you and you can click learn more to find out. And thank you so much, Dr. Hanson, again, for sharing your time with us in this community. We really appreciate it.
It's an honor, Kaylee, and please call me Rick. And it's an honor to be part of this community. And I was just thinking how great the name is, Awake. Awake. Fantastic. So may we all be awake for our own sake and that of others.
Thank you. So take care, and thank you to all of you out there for joining us tonight.